Hare Krishna. Is it started, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu.
Oh, thank you. Hare Krishna, devotees. Today we are reading verses from Canto 3, Chapter 23, verses 47 and 48. Chapter is about Devahuti's lamentation. So I'll read the verses, translation purpose, and speak about what I have been meditating. So 47. Tasyam adattaretastam bhavayan atmanatmavit nodha vidhaya rupam svam sarvasankalpavit vibhuhu. Tasyam adattaretastam bhavayam atmanatmavit nodha vidhaya rupam svam sarvasankalpavit vibhuhu. Word to word. Tasyam, in her. Adatta, he deposited. Retaha, semen. Tam, her. Bhavayan, regarding. Atmana, as half of himself. Atmavit, a knower of spirit soul. Nodha, into 9. Vidhaya, having divided. Rupam, body. Swam, his own. Sarva Sankalpavit, the knower of all desires. Vibhuhu, the powerful Kardama. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The powerful Kardama Muni was the knower of everyone's heart, and he could grant whatever one desired. Knowing the spiritual soul, he regarded her as half of his body. Dividing himself into 9 forms, he impregnated Devahuti with 9 discharges of semen. Purport. Since Kardama Muni could understand that Devahuti wanted many children, at the first chance he begot 9 children at one time. He is described here as Vibhu, the most powerful master. By his yogic power, he could at once produce 9 daughters in the womb of Devahuti. Text 48. Atah sa susuve sadyo Devahuti striyaha praja Sarvastascharu sarvangyo lohitotpalagandayah. Word to word. Ataha, then, sa, she, susuve, gave birth, sadyaha, on the same day, Devahutihi, Devahuti, striyaha, females, prajah, progeny, sarva, all, ta, they, charu sarva angyaha, charming in every limb, lohita, red, utpala, like the lotus, gandayaha, fragrant. Translation. Immediately afterward, on the same day, Devahuti gave birth to 9 female children, all charming in every limb and fragrant with the scent of the red lotus flower. Purport. Devahuti was too sexually excited, and therefore she discharged more ova, and 9 daughters were born. It is said in the Smriti Shastra as well as in the Ayurveda that when the discharge of the male is greater, male children are begotten, but when the discharge of the female is greater, female children are begotten. It appears from the circumstances that Devahuti was more sexually excited, and therefore she had 9 daughters at once. All the daughters, however, were very beautiful, and their bodies were nicely formed. Each resembled a lotus flower and was fragrant like a lotus. Start with the prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupaha Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamsha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nitinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Kauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine शुश्रूषोषतधानस्य वासुदेवा कथारुचि स्यान्मत्तः सेवया विप्रा पुण्यतीर्थानिसेवनात् शृण्वतां स्वकथा कृष्ण पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तन हृदयन्तस्तो हि अभद्राणि विधुनोति सुहृत्सताम् नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधार श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय Welcome again to today's Srimad Bhagavatam class, verses 47 and 48 from Canto 3, Chapter 23, Dehoti's Lamentation. So today I will speak briefly about different rasas and how Krishna is the reservoir of all rasas, and the sex which is in the material world and how it is compared to the spiritual world. And I will have one more example, a couple that similar to Devahuti and Kardama, how they did, how Lord has incarnated within as their child. And also I will speak at the end one verse of Sikshastika to conclude with how the chanting helps with all of this. So in Nectar of Devotion, we know about this line, how Krishna is a reservoir of all rasas, raso vai saha. And we know there are several rasas and categorized as primary, and there are several more secondary rasas. Some of them being Adi rasa and Vatsalya rasa, Madhurya rasa, Shanta Dasya, and some other are in secondary where it's Bibhatsa, and there is a rasa with anger, wonder. So there are several other rasas, and Krishna is a reservoir of all these rasas. And in this section of the chapter, mainly it focuses on the Adi rasa. The Adi by literally is means first. Rasa is the love or the melos, and each and every of this rasa is nothing but the love for Krishna. Adi rasa, therefore, it is first rasa, which is mainly an attraction between a man and a woman. And therefore, when something is coming from Krishna, if we use it for Krishna's sake, then the desire will serve for a higher purpose. And in this case, as we know from the beginning of this chapter and the previous chapters, Kardamamuni and Devahuti were participating in sexual pleasure, but for a higher purpose, and that is for Krishna's sake. So whenever we have our desires and we dovetail for the Krishna, then that is good. Otherwise, it is not so good, or it is, in fact, it's bad. Srila Prabhupada says that. And we also know the nectar of devotion, the foundational verse for Uttama Bhakti is the end. It says Anukulyena Krishna Anushilanam. So it says the same thing, that whatever we do, that should be dovetailed for the pleasure of Krishna. And in this verses, as it mainly speaks about how they enjoyed, there is very very good descriptions of how Kardamamuni has built the aerial mansion, and how they were roaming in the heavenly planets, and the other descriptions of how they're enjoying. So therefore, this the sex that we think of materially, I mean, they are in the material world and they are doing this act of sex. So uh, that is for a different purpose, though. But when we see the sex in material world, there must be something in the spiritual world also, because we know everything in the material world is a perverted reflection of whatever is happening in the spiritual world. So I was curious at some point, not while preparing for this class, but so what does that look like in spiritual world? Prabhupada says in some of his conversations that in spiritual world, or in Vaikuntha Lokas also, there are husbands and wives, and their sexual pleasure is not what we perceive in material world. That means, as we know, that there is no birth, death, old age, and disease in the Vaikuntha planet. So obviously there is no concept of conception uh, or anything that happens within our world. So what is their pleasure? When they have husbands and wives, what they do, they one of the conversation that I have read is, so even they attract to each other, they have attraction for each other, but their attraction is dependent on how each other reciprocate, or how they get attracted in their services to Krishna. So the husband appreciates the qualities or her service to Krishna, and the wife appreciates the husband's absorption or the qualities or service for Krishna. That's how they get attracted to each other, and they serve Krishna together. And that pleasure of dovetailing their services to Krishna is much, much higher than the sexual or the sensual pleasure that we can think of. Therefore, when they have something of a highest level of pleasure, then there is no need for something to go for a lower level of pleasure. So therefore, they don't even think of the grossly sexual pleasure. But in the material world, we know it is completely different. And even within the material world, there are grades of that pleasure. The standard of pleasure is different. As we read from Srimad Bhagavatam, Kardamamuni and Devahuti, their standard of pleasure is much, much higher than what we on the earthly planet we go through. So the grades or the duration of that pleasure is very less in the case of earthly planets. But as we go on to the heavenly planets, as we see in these examples, also in these descriptions. The previous verse, I think it talks about it's about 100 autumns have passed in their enjoyment, and they don't even think it is just like a brief span of time. It passed like a brief span of time in the previous verse. So it is, therefore it's a very high standard, and we can't even imagine what that seems like. And if we can't imagine this in the earthly realm, we can't even imagine what is going to happen in the spiritual realm and what that pleasure would be in terms of serving Krishna. So we have this in the material world, and as we know, material world is the foundation, or everyone who enters into this material world have to get attracted to this particular thing, and everyone is fond. This is a main topic, whether we speak it out or not. But so without uh, sex, material world cannot operate, and that is the main purpose why Brahma has created and all his sons, especially Kardama Muni and other Prajapatis, were born for a purpose of procreation. Therefore, material world cannot operate without that. With that, we are entangled and we have to go through a lot of trouble. So what to do without and with? This is a conflict, and there are similar conflicts that we face in this material world, without and with, what to do. So again, it comes back to aligning ourselves, our actions with what our scripture says, and dovetail in Krishna service. That's what Devahuti and Kardama Muni were doing. So what is the trouble that we have to undergo? Because it's a pleasure. We say it is a pleasure, but at the same time, we are saying it is a big trouble, and we know that we experienced it. Grastha's life have experienced this already. The trouble that we have to go through is to maintain the after effects of it, maintain our family, maintain the children, and how the mind has to go through the pain of conceiving a child, or for a woman that have to go through when at the time when Amani Radha was conceived. I was asking my brother, who is a doctor, he was saying the pain that a woman has to go through is unimaginable. Like they have to go through 100 times pain that you can think of. What we can think of, any pain. Now, due to the medical technologies and all, we don't have to, or we don't see, but internally there is a pain going through, the body is going through that pain. And if you see other villages, they might not have that facilities, so they have to see that pain. So it is a lot of pain. It's a lot of trouble to undergo, and what to speak of the attraction that comes afterwards for the children, for the wife, and this all takes us to entangle in this material world. So therefore, we should carefully think when we act for something. In the Vedic times, there used to be gurukuls, and children or men used to be trained, the youth especially, and they know what they are going through in the next phase of life. So there used to be a guru who used to observe the tendencies of that particular individual, and then used to tell, okay, you can go to this grihastha ashrama, or you can continue with brahmachari and then other ashramas. But that is not the case in this time and age. Therefore, it is very difficult. Prabhupada has in a lot of occasions and told his disciples, and also there are several letters or conversations where if one has tendencies for this sexual pleasure, then one must be married. One must go through the Grihastha ashrama instead of burying within their desires, burying within themselves, and later on suffering even more. So one has to go through a Grihastha ashrama. So this enjoyment can be spiritualized. It can be spiritualized, but for that, first one needs to qualify themselves, just like how Kardamamuni and Devahuti did. As we know, the Kardamamuni and Devahuti, they were not common personalities. They follow very higher authorities. As we know, Kardamamuni's authority is Lord himself. And Devahuti's authority is Narada Muni, when in the beginning he guided her to marry this great sage Kardama Muni. So they are coming from a higher authority. They have very good qualities. In the previous chapter, we spoke about what are Devahuti's qualities and Kardama Muni's qualities. So they are not common personalities. So therefore, first one need to get qualified. So I was reading a Krishna book, recently started this year. One of my goals to read Krishna book to my daughters before going to bed. And in the third chapter, the prayers for Lord Krishna, prayers to Lord Krishna, or the appearance of Lord Krishna. Vasudeva and Devaki praised Lord Krishna. And then when Lord Krishna was appeared in 400 Chaturbhuja form, and uh, Lord speaks to Devaki that, oh Devaki, oh my mother, that you don't remember, but in the previous life when you were as Prishni, in that lifetime, and Vasudeva as Sutapa, you underwent through severe austerities. It's for 12,000 heavenly years. And as a result of that, you are completely absorbed in me. And I've appeared to please you. And when I have asked the benediction, then you asked that me to be born as your son. Even though you have complete freedom to ask for the liberation, but you did not do. Therefore, I appeared as your son, not for one time. This is the third time. The first as Prishnagarbha, the second as Vamanadev for Kashyapa Muni and Aditi, and now as myself as Krishna to you both. And this time after this, I'm going to award you the liberation back to Godhead. And therefore I have appeared as 400 form. Therefore, to let you know that I am none other than Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then he changed on her request to a child form. But therefore, even Krishna, the all-merciful Krishna has he chose his mother and father in this material world. So the austerities that they underwent, that is the qualification. They just did not have these desires and have children. It's 12,000 years, and they don't have desire for sexual pleasure. They went through controlling their senses, and they in the description it says they ate the leaves the dry leaves that were fall on the ground. So that is the qualification they went through. And even Kardamamuni, how many years? Some thousands of years, he went through austerity to get a beautiful wife. Even though it is material, we heard in our previous classes, and Lord himself appeared and he shed tears. So it is these personalities are not they are very highly qualified personalities. Therefore, first one need to get qualified. And in the verse, I think powerful Kardama Muni, it says that he was the knower of everyone's heart. To me, when I first read, it's very similar to a super soul, because super soul knows everyone's heart. But I was hearing from one of the Maharaja's lectures that this text specifically talks about he's the knower of Devahuti's heart, to be specific, because he regarded her as half of his body. In the beginning of this chapter, it was already mentioned, due to her austerity of serving of serving Kardama Muni, all that he have achieved in his austerities, that he said he's going to present, or is to give her that vision to her. So he regarded her as half of his body. We also say, there is a saying that we sometimes say, my wife is my better half. But how much I know about my wife, or how much she know about me? Sometimes she complain, or mostly she complain, that you don't know anything about me. And we must, in our daily life, we see this. We don't know each other at all, and we are trying to be better at that part. But it's a better half. They are the example here, Kadamoni and Devahuti, that they each know very well. And therefore, that is how it is it needs to be taken here, as a knower of everyone's heart, that he knows the desires of the Devahuti. And as part of that, therefore, he impregnated Devahuti with 9 discharges of semen. And in the previous text, we learned that he manifested into 9 forms, and therefore he fulfilled her desires. And one of the qualities of Kardamoni, later in the text, we will understand how detached he is, even though he enjoyed the sexual pleasure. However, he's completely detached. And how do we know it? As soon as the children were born, he was ready to get out. So therefore, that tells us, even during the act of that, he was completely detached. So they are very highly qualified personalities in that way, which not to be imitated. And in the next verse, 48, she gave birth to the 9 children. That is not common to, very uncommon. And each of the children are very charming, and they resemble the lotus flower and as fragrant as the lotus flower. This text emphasizes the beauty and the grace of these children. And we know what happens afterwards. I mean, in later part, Brahma instructs to give these 9 daughters to the great sages for, again, the procreation purposes. And that's what they do. And in the purport, it is said that the teachings of Smriti Shastra and Ayurveda were given. That it specifically says, it's basically the gender of the offspring is determined by the relative dominance of the male or female discharge during the conception. And if the discharge of the male is greater, then male children are conceived. Otherwise, the female children are conceived. In our modern science, there are some similarities, but there are mostly differentiated. And the modern science of the biology looks for the genetics, like chromosomes. If there is a presence of Y chromosome, then it's going to be a male children. So anyways, I'm not an expert in either of these subjects, but there is similarities between Ayurveda and the modern science, but there are other things too. There is something to do with this lotus flower. that it must be. I mean, we know it, material body is beautiful. We saw, we touched it, and therefore, I think most of this beauty is compared to the lotus flower because of the formation, even formation of the petals, maybe, and the fragrance of the lotus flower. The beauty, just by looking at it, it's completely different. So these are the verses. I would like to conclude with one verse from Sikshastrika. Sorry, I'm a little over time. The first verse, which says, Cheto darpana marjanam bhavamaha tavagni nirvapanam shreya kairava chandrika vitaranam vidyavadhu jivanam. So in the second line of the last part, vidyavadhu jivanam, when I was reading this Japa book, the first chapter talks about this perfection, seven perfections, and this is one of them. Vidya literally means knowledge. Vadhu means wife, and Vidya Vadhu Jivanam, the life. It is literally says the life of the wife of knowledge. So in that, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur comments of that as the wife naturally follows her husband. Then I was thinking, because I was preparing for this, the Devahuti also naturally followed her husband in a service, as so much so that she became emaciated in her body and lost all her complexion and everything. So that much service. So that is the way of chaste wife. So naturally follows her husband in his service. So similarly, the knowledge also follows the chanting of the holy names. So what is this transcendental knowledge? Bhagavad Gita 101, soul, that we are not this body, we are soul, and then our relationship with the Lord. So once we know that knowledge, that we are not this bodies, and we are in the constitutional position, we are the servants of the Lord, serving him eternally. So this knowledge is follows by the chanting of the holy names. So the chanting can bring us that perfection. One of the perfection, we don't need to ask or pray for their perfection, because it automatically gives us, just like the first one, Cheto Darpana Marjanam. It purifies our consciousness from all the dust that we have accumulated, but we don't need to do our chanting for that purpose. It automatically does that. Similarly, this one, the knowledge follows the chanting of the holy names. It automatically happens. So this is one of the perfection. What happens at the end? The same chanting can take us back to Krishna's abode and places beside Krishna. That has the potential. That's the potency of chanting. So I pray all of us have more qualitative chanting, and go back to Krishna's pastimes at some point. I will end this here. Please forgive if there is any mistakes. And Vanchakalpatarubhyasya kripa sindhubhyo vacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavibhyo namo namaha. Thank you so much for today's. If you have any comments or discussion, we can spend a few minutes.
Hare Krishna, very nice class, Prabhu. I think I was going to say like an all-rounded presentation. I especially like the point. Somehow today, I think what struck me was, this people who have, I mean, we keep hearing, right? Like when you have a higher taste, you'll easily let go of the lower ones. And yes, the spiritual happiness is something that I don't have an absolutely an idea of, like, and not even an iota of an idea. But even in the material pleasures, there is hierarchy. And so, in one sense, like we hear, right? Like, for example, pigs, they wallow in dirt, and that's their idea of pleasure. Or a male donkey getting kicked by a female donkey. And
Yes.
we are able to see those lower forms of happiness. But then when we see these higher forms, then I think at least theoretically we can get this idea that we can let go of this one. And that was one thing. And the second thing was, you mentioned you reading to your daughters in the night. Thank you for that. I had to hear it because I used to read Navabraja Mahima every night to my kids, and
Mm.
you had a break. So I think I'll restart that tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Madhusudhan. Yeah, thank you for your comments. And yeah, it was my selfish benefit that I want to read Krishna's pastimes at some point. And I thought Krishna book is very good, and uh, it's even beautiful when we speak to children. That way, it is more fun. So I thought that's why I started. Thank you. Okay, I think we'll end here. Uh, thank you. Hare Krishna. I think I'll end. Lakshmikant Prabhu must be busy.